Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Sam Elliott built his legacy on silence, but not the kind that feels empty, the kind that speaks volumes. For over 6 decades, that deep, rugged voice and steady stare shaped how America saw the Wild West. He wasn't just acting, he was the symbol of old-school strength, loyalty, and quiet power. But behind that calm, unshakable image burned a sadness that never truly went away. A deep disappointment in what he saw happening to the world he loved. Because for Sam, the West wasn't just a movie set. It was sacred. And through the years, he watched it get sold off, glamorized, and turned into something shallow. Among all those letdowns, one name stung more than any other. The man once seen as his equal in grit and glory, Clint Eastwood. At first, Hollywood painted them as twin legends, 2 cowboys cut from the same rough cloth. But Sam knew better. He saw Clint as the reflection of everything the Western spirit shouldn't become. Flashy, loud, political, and too eager for the spotlight. To Sam, the real West was about truth, not theatrics. The breaking point came in August 2012. Clint Eastwood walked onto a stage in Florida during a massive political event, dragging an empty chair with him. Millions watched in disbelief as he spoke to it, pretending a famous political figure was sitting there. Some laughed, others cringed, and the internet exploded overnight. People started posting photos, talking to empty chairs, turning it into a viral moment. Meanwhile, far from the chaos, Sam Elliott was in Texas, filming a Dodge Ram commercial. Someone on set recalled how he froze when he saw the footage, his jaw locked, eyes cold, no words at all. After a long silence, he just shook his head, as if realizing the world he once knew had changed forever. To Sam, Clint had turned the cowboy's quiet pride into a circus act. He forgot who he is, Sam reportedly muttered before walking away, his voice heavy with disappointment. In Sam's world, a real Westerner never used the hat or the horse to push politics. Those symbols stood for honor, not performance. So while the internet laughed and late-night shows mocked Clint's stunt, Sam didn't join in. He wasn't amused. He was hurt. What he felt wasn't anger, it was betrayal. The man who once embodied quiet strength had turned the cowboy spirit into a punchline. Months later, Clint made things worse when he doubled down in an interview, saying he had no regrets and that people were just too sensitive. That hit Sam like a gut punch. The humility he once respected in Clint seemed gone, replaced by a hard, unshakable pride. "That's not the Clint I admired anymore," Sam told a close friend. "Now he acts like he is America." From there, the distance between them only widened. As Clint released new films like American Sniper and The Mule, audiences split right down the middle. Some called him bold. Others said he was glorifying arrogance. Through it all, Sam stayed silent. But those close to him noticed the tension every time Clint's name came up. His jaw would tighten, his eyes darken like he was watching the sunset fade on something he once believed in. Then, in 2016, Clint stirred up the public again with a statement about truth and fear. The internet went wild. Fans praised him, critics fired back. But Sam didn't react publicly. He didn't have to. For him, that one line proved everything. The man who used to speak truth through silence was now using words to serve his own pride. To Sam Elliott, silence wasn't weakness. It was sacred. A cowboy's silence carried weight, meaning respect. When someone broke that code, when they used the West not as a way of life but as a stage, they weren't one of the real ones anymore. By the end of the decade, Sam and Clint had gone their separate ways for good. Sam kept working quietly, holding on to the roots that made him who he was. Projects like A Star is Born and 1883 kept the true cowboy spirit alive without turning it into a show. Clint, meanwhile, kept directing, speaking, and dividing audiences wherever he went. To outsiders, it might have just looked like 2 old legends disagreeing. But to Sam Elliott, it was something much deeper, the end of a brotherhood that never truly existed. It wasn't just a rift between 2 men. It was the fall of a code, the moment when the cowboy stopped being a man of honor and became a brand. And if Clint Eastwood's choices marked the West's fall through politics, another Hollywood giant, Robert Redford, did it through something even subtler: perfection. Handsome, brilliant, glowing with that golden boy charm, Redford didn't break the rules. He rewrote them, and in doing so, changed what it meant to be a hero in Hollywood forever. He looked untouchable, the golden boy who could do no wrong. But to Sam Elliott, Robert Redford wasn't a hero at all. He was a mask, a man wrapped in morals that didn't match the life behind them. Sam had a nickname for him, the prince who talks like a preacher. To Sam, Redford symbolized the very thing Hollywood loved most, pretending. Redford had built his brand as the conscience of the industry, the man of art, integrity, and planet-saving purpose. When he launched the Sundance Film Festival back in 1981, it seemed pure, a safe haven for dreamers, rebels, and indie filmmakers just trying to be heard. Sam respected that. It was noble. But with time, the shine faded. By the early 2000s, Sundance wasn't the gritty playground of outsiders anymore. It had turned into a luxury spectacle, a red carpet covered in snow. Streets once filled with artists were now jammed with limousines. Designer brands sponsored the parties, and the same Hollywood studios Sundance once pushed back against were now competing for selfies and press headlines. Independent filmmakers whispered that they couldn't even afford to attend the festival that was supposed to represent them. Critics noticed too. One review called Sundance the luxury version of the Hollywood it used to resist. Sam didn't need an article to see it. He'd been there. "Go to Park City now," he once told a friend while filming out on a ranch. "You don't smell film stock or sweat anymore. You smell perfume and electric car fumes." Meanwhile, Redford kept giving those polished speeches about simplicity, the planet, and authenticity, all while living across massive estates, from a 700-acre ranch in Santa Fe to a mansion worth millions in Napa Valley. When reporters questioned him, he'd brush it off with that same soft smile that had melted hearts for decades. But to Sam, that smile had lost its meaning. "He talks like he's saving the world," Sam told a friend once, "but he's just polishing his halo." Then came 2019, a bold editorial labeled Redford, a Hollywood elite hypocrite. Sam didn't gloat. He just nodded, quietly but firmly. To him, Redford had become the perfect symbol of what had gone wrong in Hollywood, people preaching truth while living far above it. Once, Sam admired Redford's ideals. Now, he couldn't even stand in the same room. At an Oscars after-party in 2017, Sam reportedly walked in, saw Redford laughing beside Jane Fonda, and turned right back out. No words, no anger, just done. A witness said he looked like a man who'd finally given up, not on Hollywood, but on what it had promised to be. And just when Sam thought he'd seen enough of false cowboys and fading codes, along came Kevin Costner, the polished modern cowboy who, in Sam's eyes, broke the code completely. To the world, Costner was everything a Hollywood cowboy should be, rugged, magnetic, confident. But to Sam, he was just an actor in borrowed boots, playing dress-up for the cameras. Their quiet feud began back in 1994, when two westerns went head-to-head in theaters just months apart. Sam starred in Tombstone, raw, dusty, and real, while Costner produced and starred in Wyatt Earp, a glossy $60 million spectacle that critics called too clean, too polished, not enough dirt. Sam reportedly read that review and laughed. "That's Hollywood cowboys," he said. "They ride horses like they're scared to wrinkle their jackets." From that day forward, an invisible wall stood between them. They never fought in public, but the tension was there. To Sam, Costner's fame was built on a studio-made version of the West. Perfect lighting, perfect dialogue, perfect hair, nothing wild, nothing true. Decades later, when Costner returned as John Dutton in Yellowstone, all those old feelings came rushing back. The show was massive, hailed as the rebirth of the American Western. But Sam wasn't impressed. To him, it wasn't rebirth, it was repackaging. "They turned the West into a truck commercial," he said quietly to a friend. That one line said everything. To Sam Elliott, the soul of the West wasn't found in fame, power, or polish. It lived in silence, dust, and truth. Three things he feared Hollywood had forgotten forever. He told Vanity Fair that Hollywood's cowboys had become too clean, too beautiful, too fragrant. 3 months later, Kevin Costner clapped back on Entertainment Tonight with a smirk that said it all. He'd heard Sam's jab, and he wasn't losing sleep over it. "Sam thinks he owns the West?" Costner joked. "If so, maybe he should buy America too." The crowd burst into laughter, but Sam didn't find it funny at all. He caught that clip later while walking his horses through the Malibu hills. His response was quiet, but sharp. He thinks the West is an asset. I think it's a soul. And right there, in that single line, you could hear the divide between them. For Sam, this wasn't just about movies. It was about honor. He'd built his life around the old cowboy code: dignity, loyalty, and silence. Meanwhile, Costner's off-screen chaos only made things worse in Sam's eyes. From his messy $80 million divorce back in the 90s to endless rumors of affairs and lawsuits, Costner seemed like a man chasing the cowboy dream using a Hollywood playbook. "A cowboy doesn't need lawyers to keep his honor," Sam once muttered on set. By 2023, reports surfaced about Costner feuding with Yellowstone creator Taylor Sheridan over filming schedules, and that was the final straw. Sam couldn't believe it. "Cowboys don't argue over schedules," he told fans during a Texas event. "They ride until the sun goes down." The crowd went wild, but Sam wasn't flexing for applause. He was reminding everyone what being a cowboy truly meant. Then came someone who shook Sam's beliefs to the core: Benedict Cumberbatch, the outsider who dared to reinvent the West. If Costner bruised Sam's pride, Cumberbatch challenged his entire idea of what the West even was. To Sam, the West wasn't just a setting for a movie, it was a way of life. You didn't act like a cowboy. You became one through dust, silence, and survival. So when Hollywood started calling a British actor the man who redefined the cowboy, it hit Sam like a slap in the face. Everything came to a boiling point in February 2022. Cumberbatch starred in Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog, a haunting film that dominated award season with 12 Oscar nominations and endless praise for its raw take on masculinity and repression. But to Sam, it was an insult to everything real cowboys stood for. Then came the podcast that set the internet on fire. On February 28th, Sam appeared on Mark Maron's WTF podcast and dropped what many called a verbal thunderbolt. His gravelly voice was filled with disbelief as he said, "I watched that movie. Naked cowboys riding horses, speaking in British accents, and they call that the West?" He didn't stop there. "They know nothing about Montana." Within hours, headlines erupted. Sam Elliott versus the power of the dog. Social media went wild. Some praised him for being fearless. Others said he was just bitter. Fans debated, critics dissected, and the divide grew wider than ever. Cumberbatch, staying calm as ever, addressed the controversy on the BAFTA red carpet with grace. He simply said, "I respect all viewpoints." It was a classy move, but it didn't change how Sam felt inside. Because to him, Hollywood wasn't just misunderstanding the West. It was rewriting it, polishing away the dirt and silence that made it real in the first place. Art is meant to explore, not to possess. It was an elegant answer, but it didn't soften the sting. What most people didn't know was that the clash between Sam Elliott and the Power of the Dog team had history. Quiet, personal, and sharp. Back in 2019, director Jane Campion had actually asked Sam to narrate a short intro for the film. His reply was just one short email. "I won't tell a story about the West through the words of someone who doesn't understand it." That single line said it all. When the movie later became a global sensation, winning awards and endless praise, Sam's refusal hardened into conviction. He truly believed he'd made the right call, but Jane Campion wasn't one to stay silent either. At a Directors Guild of America event, she fired back, calling Sam a man of a past generation. The audience erupted in applause. Sam didn't respond publicly, but his silence spoke volumes. To him, The Power of the Dog wasn't an honest look at the West. It was an emotional therapy session disguised as one. They made it about feelings. He reportedly told a friend, "The West is about survival." Their paths crossed only once after all that tension. It happened at a post-Oscar party in Los Angeles. According to a waiter who witnessed it, the air froze when they shook hands. Mr. Sam looked him straight in the eye, the waiter said, didn't smile, and walked away. That cold handshake became legend among fans. Some saw it as old-school toughness. Others called it stubborn pride. But for Sam, it was about something much deeper. He wasn't fighting Benedict, Clint, or Kevin anymore. He was fighting what Hollywood itself had become. Too polished, too safe, too disconnected from the dirt and sweat that built the stories they were selling. Cumberbatch's calm, collected response didn't change anything. You can't play a cowboy. Sam told a friend in Santa Fe. You either are one or you're not. That was his creed. Simple, stubborn, and true. But then came someone Sam never expected to turn against. Taylor Sheridan, the man who branded the modern West and sold it to the highest bidder. Of all the people Sam grew to resent, Sheridan's fall from grace in his eyes cut the deepest, because unlike the others, Sam had once truly admired him. When Sheridan wrote Hell or High Water in 2016, a gritty, hard-edged modern Western that earned 4 Oscar nominations, Sam sent him a handwritten note. In it, he called Sheridan the last man who still understands the Texas wind. It was the highest compliment Sam could give. Back then, he believed Sheridan got it. His writing was sharp, but humble. His characters were raw, honest, and flawed, the kind of storytelling that smelled like dust, sweat, and truth. But as time went on, that respect began to fade. What started as admiration was about to twist into disappointment, because to Sam Elliott, the man who once carried the spirit of the West was now turning it into a brand. It was everything the West deserved, raw, fearless, and alive. But 2 years later, all that respect turned to ashes. In 2018, Taylor Sheridan launched Yellowstone, a show that would dominate television, rebranding the cowboy myth into a global sensation. It had Kevin Costner as the patriarchal cowboy, million-dollar ranch sets, wide-sweeping drone shots, and a budget that could buy half of Montana. It looked flawless, too flawless. Every frame gleamed like a perfume ad disguised as a Western. Fans called it art. Critics called it genius. But Sam Elliott saw something else, a reflection of how far the West had drifted from its roots. He watched the first episode from his quiet Malibu home, sitting in the leather armchair by the window that overlooked the ocean. 15 minutes in, he switched it off. To him, that wasn't the West. It was a commercial with horses. They turned the West into a premium version of Dallas, he told a friend later, shaking his head with that familiar silent disappointment that said more than a scream ever could. What stung Sam most wasn't just the series itself. It was what it represented. Taylor Sheridan wasn't just telling stories anymore. He was building an empire. The once gritty screenwriter who'd captured the raw pulse of the American frontier in Hell or High Water had now become a Hollywood mogul, producing, directing, branding, and selling the image of the cowboy to anyone who could pay. He sold Yellowstone to Paramount for nearly $500 million, negotiated full creative control, and even leased out his own Texas ranch as a filming location, collecting checks from every angle. Industry insiders started calling him the double-dipping cowboy. Sheridan didn't flinch. When asked about it in an interview, he simply snapped, "I work for a living. If they need my horses, I rent them out. What's wrong with that?" To Sam Elliott, everything. The West doesn't need props, he told a colleague in Austin. It speaks through dirt and wind. Now they're staging it like a Broadway show. To Sam, the cowboy code was sacred, something you earned through grit, sweat, and silence. But what Sheridan had done, in his eyes, was turn that legacy into a luxury brand, something you could package, polish, and sell. It wasn't the frontier anymore. It was a franchise. Their tension quietly simmered until the moment that could have changed everything, when Sheridan invited Sam to star in 1883, the prequel to Yellowstone. At first, it felt like destiny, a reunion of two men who seemed to understand what the frontier was really about: struggle, loss, and survival. The early scripts were tough, poetic, and painfully real, the kind of writing that reminded Sam of the old masters. Slow-burning, dust-choked, and honest. He believed in it. For the first time in years, he thought maybe someone in Hollywood got it. On set, Sam worked like he always did, quietly, with precision. He refused to use stand-ins. He rode his own horses, and he delivered every line like it had been carved from the earth itself. But when filming wrapped and Paramount's editors got their hands on it, everything changed. The final cut came out polished, pretty, and smooth. The rough edges were gone. The pain had been replaced with poetic gloss. They turned blood into perfume, Sam muttered to a crew member, shaking his head. Critics hailed 1883 as groundbreaking. Awards poured in. Streaming numbers broke records. But for Sam, the praise felt hollow. He believed Sheridan had used his face, his truth, to sell something fake. When the show won big at the Critics' Choice Awards, both men ended up on the same stage, but they might as well have been miles apart. A photographer in the audience said later, Sam looked the other way. Sheridan stared at his phone. You could feel the frost between them. Behind the polite smiles and bright lights was the quiet heartbreak of a man watching everything he stood for get dressed up and sold to the masses. When Paramount invited Sam to return for the sequel, 1923, he didn't even think twice. I don't do films about the West that lack dirt, he said flatly. That was it. No explanation, no negotiation, just a line in the sand. To the rest of the world, Taylor Sheridan was a visionary, the man who had revived the Western for a new generation. But to Sam Elliott, he had become its undertaker, the man who dressed the West up like a fashion label and sold it to city people who'd never felt the sting of dust in their lungs. They sell the West now, Sam told a friend one night over bourbon. Leather jackets for $1,000, resorts that look like ranches, actors who smell like cologne instead of cattle. He paused, looking out the window, his reflection caught in the glass. They took what was sacred and made it marketable. Sam Elliott never chased fame. He carried it, quietly, heavily, like a storm cloud that never asked for thunder. For him, the West wasn't nostalgia or branding. It was a code, a promise written in dust, sweat, and silence. A promise that too many had broken in the name of ratings and relevance. In interviews, Sam never raised his voice, never pointed fingers, but those who knew him said you could feel his anger beneath the calm. Not the anger of ego, but the heartbreak of a man who loved something that no longer existed. He'd seen it all. Clint Eastwood turned the cowboy into a political symbol. Robert Redford turned rebellion into luxury. Kevin Costner polished the dirt into Hollywood gold. And Taylor Sheridan transformed authenticity into empire. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about principle. Sam Elliott represented a world that no longer had a place in the modern industry. A world where silence carried weight, where a handshake meant something, and where men rode not for fame, but for survival. Even in his later years, Sam refused to adapt to Hollywood's noise. He rarely posted on social media, never bragged about paychecks, and didn't chase awards. He said once, "Fame's like a shadow. You can't grab it, and it disappears when the light changes." That line alone could have been carved onto his tombstone. Simple, stoic, and timeless. He wasn't bitter. He was haunted. Haunted by a question he couldn't shake. What happens when the spirit of the cowboy is no longer real, only remembered? Every project he took after 1883 was chosen carefully. Slower films, quieter roles, parts that didn't pretend. He stayed loyal to that dusty code that had shaped him for 6 decades. He didn't want perfection. He wanted truth. And that's why Sam Elliott still stands out, even in a Hollywood obsessed with polish. Because while others built empires, he built integrity. While others chased trends, he chased meaning. And while others sold their version of the West to the highest bidder, Sam protected its ghost. He knew the world had changed, that maybe there was no going back to the dirt and silence that once defined the West. But as long as Sam Elliott was still here, that spirit wasn't completely gone. Because for Sam, the West wasn't just a story, it was a promise. A promise to stay real when everything around you becomes performance. A promise to speak less and mean more. A promise that even when the dust settles, the truth remains standing. So, now that you've heard it all, the betrayals, the pride, the fading honor, here's the question that still lingers like smoke over an empty campfire. Who do you think cut Sam Elliott the deepest? Was it Clint Eastwood, the icon who lost his compass? Robert Redford, the golden boy who sold virtue? Or Taylor Sheridan, the protege who turned grit into gold? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. I want to know who you think left the deepest scar. Smash that like button if this story made you feel something real. Share it with someone who loves the old school truth. And don't forget to subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from. See you on the next one, partner.